you want risk level of a project to matter. You know, whatever your business is, there's going to be, different investment ideas. Some of them are going to be relatively less risky. Some of them are going to be risky. You cannot evaluate them using the same sort of hurdle rate. Whatever you do, if your project makes me 10% a year, I'm good. That is not a good way to evaluate projects. And four, you need to be able to at least estimate the value added to the firm. It's not enough that you decide this is going to add value. You also want to know, is that value $1 billion, $5 million, $2 trillion? Okay. Why? Because as financial managers and managers in general, you have a fiduciary duty to your shareholders. So you got to be able to tell them we're doing this, and if we go ahead with this project, we expect this project to take us to be a $1 trillion company. Whether or not that will happen, that's a different question. But at least as your shareholder, I'm going to evaluate your statement. And based on what I believe, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to stay with you or go to somebody else. By law, even if it's not by law, as your fiduciary duty, you have to inform me on that. But if all you're saying is, don't worry about it, this is going to be good, that doesn't mean anything. It's like I come here the first day and say, don't worry, guys, I'm going to teach you guys so much. That doesn't mean anything. What am I going to teach you? What do I expect to teach you? What do I want you to get out of here? And based on that, this is, you may not have too much choice given lack of sections, but if you did, you say, I don't like this guy, I'll go with the other guy. Think of it that way. Now, there are many criteria people use. Okay. I'm going to start with the one that is the ideal, at least among the ones that we could cover in this class. But we will also talk about why and how people are using other criteria. The one that we will always go with is so-called net present value, aka NPV. Okay. Now, this is rather simple. NPV is present value of future cash flows minus cost of investment. We're going to write a formula for that. I'm not going to do too much template development today. Today is more about concepts. But on Wednesday, I actually have a great template. As you know, all I care is what you do with those numbers. Present value of future cash flows minus cost of investment. And by present value of future cash flows, I'm going to take the cash flow in year one, divide that by 1 plus R. Come on, work with me. You don't need to make any of these calculations by hand, even without a template. For example, in Excel, this would be the unfortunately named MPV function. It would be R, CF1, CF2, CFN. Rather simple calculation. This is one of the reasons I keep using Excel for you guys. Not because I like being fancy, which I do. Uh, you don't need to torture yourself to come up with numbers. And the so-called cost of investment is basically negative of the cash flow zero, right? Now, let's think about this. Number one, does MPV use all the cash flows projected? Yes or no? Let me make sure that you know that this is Excel. Because what Excel calls MPV and what we call MPV are not the same things. I mean, this is Microsoft culture. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys before. There's a simple function to calculate the square root of a number in Excel worksheet. It's called SQRT. Makes sense, right? There's a part of Excel where you could do some coding. You could do your own functions and stuff. There is also a function over there that is called that calculates square root. Guess what the name of that function is? SQR. If you didn't know, you would think that actually squares something. No, probably two different people did that, and Microsoft never changed that. This is not a new thing. I've been using Excel and the so-called macros since 1985. It has been like that since 1985. It's been 40 years. They haven't changed it. They didn't bother to change it. All right, just look at this. Does NPV use all of the cash flows? It is a rhetorical question, but you can answer yes or no, right? Yes, it does. So good, all the cash flows. Two, does it use time value or does it take time value into account? It does because it discounts the cash flows in the future at a higher rate than the cash flows at a lower rate. I mean, if R is 10%, next year's $110 is $100 today. 2 years from now, $121 is equal to $100 today, so on and so forth. So it does take that into account. Good. Number three is somewhat not obvious because at this point I just told you that there's a number R. But whenever you use MPV, that R should be a risk adjusted number. And the answer to that is yes, more than likely. Unless the firm makes the mistake of using a common hurdle for everything. And four, does it provide a value added to the firm? And the answer is by definition, yes, because present value of the future cash flows is what you get out of the project. Deduct that from the cost. That's the value added. That's it. So MPV satisfies all of these. And you're probably thinking, why are we even doing anything else? Well, I'm not going to argue that over there, but Remember, you're dealing with human beings. People cannot easily relate to numbers like that. You're just a small shareholder. I told you that this project is going to add uh, $20 billion to a company value. You may not be able to uh, relate that you may not be able to convert that number to something you can easily relate. Some people can relate to things. Oh, this is going to increase the value of our company, or this yields a return of 20%. People can relate to that. It is not necessarily foolproof, but people like simple stuff. So it's easier to communicate. Some people are interested in, yes, we're going to invest all of this, but how fast are we getting our money back? That's another issue people ask. Or how much money do we make per dollar invested? That sort of stuff. Even though I'm going to cover them a little bit later, some of the additional criteria we're going to use, one of them is called payback period. How fast do we get our money back? Sometimes that matters. I mean, at this abstract level, we're acting like anytime we need funding for a project, we can get it. Obviously, not all firms have such an access. If you're Apple, that's not a problem. Okay? But if you're a relatively small business firm or a startup, that is a problem. So how fast you can get yourself paid back does matter. One of them we're going to call